Right, 5HP24 valve body overhaul. We're wrapping up on this 5HP24 video series of mine. I'm pretty happy that I got to the valve body because I want to finish this transmission. This is the first type valve HP24, the early type. I know this because of the black solenoid over here. If you have a different color than black, you have the modern type valve body. I also know this because I see like dates printed on the aluminum and they say 96. So this is a very early model. That's okay, because an early model valve body in an early model transmission is going to do just fine. However, this is the valve body known for wear in the main pressure regulator, which we're going to take a look at, and cracking that upper valve body housing, which we'll also take a look at. Before you start this entire valve body project, I recommend you get a bolt plan where you take the entire bolt layout and you put crosses where you have your valve body to housing, gearbox housing bolts, and you put holes in your cardboard where you have your valve body bolts, because these are the bolts that hold the valve body together, and these open holes have bolts that hold the valve body to the gearbox. Do not forget that you have 8 bolts 8 bolts on the other side of the valve body as well, which I want to take out first, and I'll tell you why. And that you have the entire solenoid block here at the back, which is also affixed to the valve body with bolts with this metal bracket. To make this easier, I first want to remove the entire solenoid block, and I want to remove the wiring. After which we can take the connectors off, and if we want to, we can measure all the solenoids. So, I already took the tension from the bolts just to speed up the movie a bit. I'm going to remove this guy, that guy, and I'm going to remove all of these bolts, and I'm going to put them in the basket right here. And then I'll be back to disassemble the valve body itself. Right, so you just saw me take that last bolt off. You get these guys out of the clips. This is my connector, this is my input and my output sensor. Now I want to push the solenoids right here out of their solenoid bore. Let me get a flathead to assist me a little bit. The reason why you don't want to take the clips off is that they are very brittle, and I guarantee you that you're going to break them. And don't ask me how I know, because I've been there before. And I want to take this entire solenoid block out all at once, so I can work on those clips later in the movie separately, and that I don't have them stuck on that heavy valve body. You want to be gentle with them. Here we have our entire wiring and solenoid assembly, and we're going to put that away. We're going to check that out later. Okay, now you want to flip it over, and you want to take those 8 bolts on the other side out first, and I'll show you why. You can see that I use 2 wooden blocks to hold the valve body. Reason for that is simple. The moment I start unbolting the valve body on top, this one's going to drop out, so I want to keep my hand under it and catch him. Also, I want to take the valve body apart in a way that the other side of the channel plate is facing upwards, so that all the accessories in the channel plate are facing upwards and will not fall out. And that allows me to reconstruct the complete configuration that this specific valve body has. Now you're going to tell me, like, why? We have drawings, so why would I care? I have seen one too many times that the 5 HP gearboxes have valve bodies in certain applications that are totally not the way the schematics tell us they should be. And so I don't want to risk this, and I reconstruct the valve body exactly the way I see it, because I do not have professional test equipment for pressures. So the only thing I can do is look what I see and put it back the way I see it, with repairs made where I need to do the repairs. You see that this like retainer block is now dropping out. It was on this side. I'm going to put that away. Now we can actually deconstruct the entire valve body. I'm going to take these bolts out first, so I have that upper valve housing secured. I now feel the upper valve body releasing. So I'm keeping my hand under that upper valve body, and now you see why I have those blocks. I can now release the last few bolts, and my upper valve body and its metal screen should come right out. And I'll tell you some funny part about that screen. There we go. Upper valve body and metal. That's a metal screen. That's the upper valve body housing. And we will be able to take this house off, but I want to do that guy first, and then we'll deconstruct the valve body. Let me get some room, because now we get the difficult part. And a pretty critical part as well. We do not necessarily need the blocks anymore. let's just use them anyway. We can now carefully take the valve housing off. This is not really a problem yet. And this is also the housing that has our selector. There we go. We took that valve body off, and remember we've got a guide pin over here, so do not forget about that guide pin. We're going to put this guy away. We can now carefully take that other valve housing off. Here we go. And this does not have a guide pin, and you see that we're now having that second block. Alright, and this is going to be the dangerous part. You got to pay real good attention now on your desk, workbench, whatever. And I'm going to tell you why. You can already see a check ball or orifice, another orifice, and whatnot. And I already see gasket material right here. The moment I take off this plate, all this stuff is going to come with it because of the suction of oil. There's multiple ways to do this. You could try to get the plate off and keep everything in position. Very difficult. You can also try to take the plate clean off, flip it over carefully, and immediately take a picture. So you see exactly where all the parts have to be. And it's getting pretty risky, so let's see if I can actually push these orifices in position. Yes, I can, and that way I won't have to take them all with me. That will actually help a lot. Here's a white orifice. You can see them through the holes. You need not worry about this. You do not have to be a pro to see them. But you do have to be careful. And you still need to check the other side of the plate to ensure you did not forget any orifice. Let me see. So far so good. Okay, now let's try to take that plate and gasket off in one piece. And careful, because if I start to shake with it, if I start to rattle with it, I may dislocate certain parts and I may not be sure where to put them back. Okay, turn him around. Ah, there we go. We missed out on an orifice and we missed out on a little poppet valve. Check this out. We got a poppet valve that sits right here. And we've got an orifice that sits right there. And we flipped it over. So that means this orifice we follow from a triangle up to an area. Let me see. We see that triangle, I think, right over there. We see that area over there. So the orifice must have sat there next to another orifice. That's correct, because we see the wear of that other orifice. And that's how I know that this orifice needs to go back. Right there. So we got that taken care of. And now we're going to take that poppet valve. Let me see what else we got. Yes, we're good. So we've got the setup complete, intact on the channel plate. And this is great. This is actually great. Here you see the old gasket. Pretty good shape. You cannot reuse this gasket. Do not try to reuse the gasket. It will not work. It will cause fluid leaks. Trust me on this. You need a new gasket for this. You can reuse everything you see here. And you can go to ZF and they'll open up your valve body and clean it for you. And ZF knows what they're doing, so don't get me wrong. They will also replace this stuff, and they know what they're doing, so don't get me wrong. But I have come back from the idea to replace all of this stuff. Instead, I verify that everything is clean, and I just leave it in. I don't see the added value of replacing perfectly intact orifices that have been lasting for 200,000 something with perfectly intact new orifices. So let me repeat, this is the BMW early valve body 3.5 liter engine channel plate layout. Filter screen, white orifice here, green check ball, brown orifice, dark orifice, black I think, blue orifice, brown orifice, poppet valve, blue orifice, white orifice, brown orifice, rubber thing. So keep that in mind. If you have a early valve body style BMW 3.5, this is your layout. I want to keep this channel plate intact. I'm going to put this channel plate away. We will clean it later. I first want to talk about the other parts of the valve body. Right here you see the dreaded upper valve body housing. And the reason why I call it the dreaded upper valve body housing is that it tends to crack right around this area. And you see this, these two ears right here, they will come loose. And when that happens, let me take this off. There you saw my valve shooting out. So let's put that valve back in. There we go. When that happens, this passage here is corrupted and will leak fluid away. And in that case, your reverse and your drive will be engaged at the same time. And when you put the car in reverse, you need to overcome drive. So you need to hit the throttle. You will overcome drive. You'll get a big jerk and you'll go in reverse. If you put it in drive and you're at a standstill, you want to go forward, but you need to overcome reverse. So you hit the throttle, you get a big jerk, and you start moving forward. This will not affect shifting. So it will go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. In a good way, it'll engage lockup, no issue. It'll go reverse. I mean, once it engages in reverse, it'll go reverse, no issue. But if this is cracked, you will experience the takeoff in reverse and drive to be troublesome. There's only one solution, a complete new valve housing, and you need to verify that you get the same number. You also need to reuse the original screen, because the early models have a different screen compared to the later models. If you swap that screen, you will have trouble in 5th gear. Ask me how I know. I swapped screen thinking I knew better, or thinking that I was keeping all my parts together. I wasn't. I swapped the screen and my gearbox had trouble in 5th. Then I found out that I swapped the screen, swapped it back to the original screen, everything was fine. So you need to keep that metal screen coupled with that type of upper valve body housing. Right here we have the most important part of the 5HP24 valve body. This is the main valve housing. The guide pin is not really, it's just a detail here. The problem with this main valve housing is your main pressure regulator, which sits right here. The problem with that main pressure regulator is that it wears in on the bore. That pressure regulator is moving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth all the time, and it wears in on the bore of this valve body housing. So this bore has some kind of nominal size. The valve actually eats away at that nominal size, causes it to become oval like an engine that has heavy wear, and that's what gets you the runaway pressure. The regulator is supposed to keep a constant pressure going through your valve body, and that pressure cannot be too high because you'll destroy stuff, but because of the bore wear you get that runaway pressure, so you start destroying stuff. The A drum always goes first. There is a few ways you can go. There's companies that can overbore this and make it round again, and then they duplicate the pressure regulator in that overbore size, and then they fix this. This is a good renowned method, but you need very good tools for this, because you need to have like a line drill right through here that makes it super straight. It can be done, and there's many transmission companies that can do it, so if that's what they offer you, definitely a good way to do this. And that you fit a Transgo shift kit. I'm gonna take that kit out right here. Company called Transgo made a kit. I don't want to show their logo because I don't want to be a commercial channel, but yeah, I gotta be honest, they made a really nice kit. Let me take out the kit. And basically Transgo says, well, we got a piston right here. Let me show you. This is a piston in nominal size, and it's got 2 sealing rings over here. And the sealing rings actually ensure that you do not get those runaway pressures. I gotta tell you though that the Transgo kit only works if your valve body isn't worn to the point where your A drum already starts to break. Because then I guess the Transgo piston also cannot compensate for that kind of ovality and wear. But here's the thing about the 5HP24 valve body and deducing stuff we know from this gearbox. Remember that we had an intact A drum and we also had an intact F clutch. I mean, it was a bit too tight, but it was intact. We already seen that the upper valve body housing is not cracked, and we also see that because of our A drum being intact, or we cannot see, but we can assume that this bore is still okay. Because if this bore wasn't okay, my A drum would have taken a beating, and it didn't. So I feel pretty confident in now fitting the Transgo kit as a solution, because I know for a fact that my A drum was intact, because I inspected it. We want to undo these bolts, we want to take that cap off. You got to be careful because it's going to shoot out, so you want to hold this. I'm going to show you. And then we want to take that piston out and see what we're looking at. I now hold my fingers tight on the housing, because when I take this last bolt off, the housing is going to shoot out. I can already see it shoot out. Never mind, I'm going to take some longer bolts and I'm going to hold it back. You can see I'm guiding it over those bolts, and now the tension is off, so that was a good solution. Let's get those bolts out. I'm gonna put that away. I've got my original spring here. Now I need to get the piston out, and it can be really tight because of that bore fit. But it's coming out alright. Here we go. Here's our original pressure regulator. And that's still an original unit. There is no Transgo kit fit here. So I'm going to take that shift kit. And right here you see the ZF regulator and you see the transgo regulator, and this is actually the area that seals, and they just enlarge that area. Let's check it out without its sealing rings. Alright, that's going to fit. There's not going to be an issue there. And they want you to fit those rings. That's 2. Let me move that piston ring to the other side. And they want you to fit the valve with the piston rings. And if you do it by the Transgo book, they tell you to put these rings on and to put it in the fridge, so that it shrinks to like a fridge on like -10 degrees. Then it shrinks, and let's say it's 20 degrees, and then you've got 30 degrees difference, and you'll fit it right in. And usually I can get them in. I just need to pry a little bit at that big piston ring. But if it really won't work, I'll just have to pause the video and shrink this first. So here's the valve ice cold from the freezer. We now take the O-rings off, because the O-rings will have compressed the piston rings, or so we hope. And this will allow us to get those piston rings in. And I'm just going to dip it in oil. So now we want to see that this one goes in all the way with the piston rings. And yes, it's going in. I've got it in. So now we take the spring. We put the spring in. And now you see that because of this very strong spring, I would not be able to use the bolts. And this is why we're going to try and fit the housing using only 2 bolts, longer ones, and we don't want to put too much stress on them. But we at least need something to start with. Maybe I'll use even more bolts. But now you see that the housing cannot flip out because of those 2 bolts that are assisting me. So now I want to use my little ratchet that I have here. I actually have a small power tool to do this for me, but I really want this to be the most backyard possible fashion for you guys. Okay, can't go any further on that one, cannot go any further on this one either, but at least it keeps the valve housing in position. And now I just have to push down on this guy, and I need to be a little bit lucky with this, because I'm really doing this in a dirty backyard way. On that slippery slope that I have there. There we go. Hang on, I'm gonna turn, so I'm using my fingers to put the housing back together, and I'm quickly securing one of the most critical bolts. It's the bolt right next to the spring. And once I've got that one in, it's gonna assist me. There we go, and now I want to put another one in. And that was the challenge, and it's been done. The final piece of the valve body to check out is the other valve housing on the other side of, like, it sits over here, and here you have the pressure block, and it actually, sorry, it sits like this because you have the solenoid here. There's nothing special about this valve housing. It is not known for trouble. You can see that's pretty clean because that's how it came out of the gearbox. I'm not going to clean this with brake cleaner. I'm not even going to take it apart. The only thing I'm going to do is just check if every valve will float by using a screwdriver and pushing a little bit on the valve. And when I have verified, I need a thinner one, sorry. When I have verified that I can get every valve to move, that's okay for me. Alright, the wiring loom. We've got an input and an output speed sensor. Here's output, there's input. We've got solenoids, and there's a temperature sensor embedded in the loom. You don't want to do anything about these solenoids. You could put them in an ultrasonic cleaner, but I think you're just going to damage them on the inside because of water or aggressive cleaner going in them. I just want to measure resistance. If I measure resistance and all resistances are good, I'm just going to reuse everything. This is MV1, 2 and 3. We're going to measure those first, and according to my table they need to measure between like 30 and 34, but that of course also matters with your outside temperature, and it's pretty cold, so it could be different. 31, that's good. 31, good. 31, also good. I mean, they measure out correct, so we're not going to touch them. Then we want to take EDS1, and that's this one over here. It's the defining solenoid, whether you have early or late setup. And EDS1 wants 5.2 to 6.8. Let's see if we can get that. Yes, 5.7, so that's good. And then we've got EDS 5432 in random, in like a different order. It's not 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's, but they are all the same. And they want to measure 6.2 to 7.8, so let's have a go at it. 5.7, theoretically that's too low, but let's see what the other ones do. 5.7, 5.6, so I guess that's the same. 5.8, so they're 5.6 to 5.8. I guess it's also a bit temperature related. That's a little bit too low. You would want to see them by the book at like 6.2, I see. I don't really mind though, because if they're all 4 on the same level, I consider them to be good. That's also a way to rule them out. We got to check those temperature sensors, and they need to measure between 292 and 350 something. Let's see what they do. Need to up the scale, because that was maximum 200 in scale. 316, that's well within. Let's see what this guy's gonna do. 312, that's also within. We also want to check the temperature sensor. The temperature sensor is supposed to have, let's see, 1000 at 25 degrees. So 25 degrees was the temperature they were using. And that's, I need to connect the pins, and that's pin 13 and pin 14. Close to 1000 at like 17 degrees outside, so that's pretty good, because this is like a temperature that increases in resistance when temperature increases, so it's logical that I'm under 1000. This takes care of our solenoid block. I'm going to reuse these solenoids. You want to give them a visual inspection, especially these with a ring and a filter. If you see dirt or grime in the filter, you can get that filter out and you can clean it. Or in that case, you may want to use a cleaner. So far they look good. You could renew the rings, but these rings seal really well. And if you just lube them with some ATF, they will be good to go. Right, so with the shift kit fit, we are ready to put the valve body back together. One little detail somebody pointed out at me when I was talking with him about this this rebuild is that I should check this little rubber over here. So I'm gonna take it out. And he said he once saw a video where he actually saw it leaking, and they tested by putting air on it. So there's the little rubber. And I actually have a new one in my seal kit. So I'm just going to slot in the new one and not even bother. And let's take some oil. There we go. And with that new rubber fit, we are ready to put the valve body back together. And to put that valve body back together, we're going to put the gasket right over here. Then we're going to put the channel plate on. Then we're going to put the upper valve bodies in the block in position. And then we're going to hold our hand with the lower valve body, and we're going to bolt everything back together. Poppet valve pointing with the sharp point upwards. I actually put it in the wrong way before. Got my orifices, got my check ball, got my new rubber in. Yes, okay, we're going to fit it. So here's our gasket. Want to fit that gasket nicely, just like that. There you go. We now want to put the channel plate on, and right now we want to be very gentle, because we do not want to move the gasket, because that means the gasket would possibly not line up with bolt holes anymore. So far I see that the gasket and the channel plate are lining up perfectly. We're going to put this lower valve body at the ready, but we don't need it yet. We're going to put those barriers back in position. Here's one with 4 right here. And they just retain the valve body together, like the channel plate and the screen. Here's the other one. I will now put these bolts in hand tight so that they hold the valve body together. That will help me out. We will now fit the big housing with our new shift kit. And you see that I put the piston in, and the notch of the piston needs to go into that sliding area that we have over there. I already pre-fit the bolts, but you don't have to. and you want these bolts to go down manually so you are sure they don't cut into any gasket material. You will feel that if you do it manually. We now take what I call the solenoid block. We check the holes pretty good, there we go. And here's the trick. Some of these bolts secure the housing, some of these bolts secure this housing and that final housing. So we want to pay attention now. And what we do is we take the other housing that we need to fit and its screen, and with that screen fit, verifying that I have my spring and cup over there, you want to put this area, the brake area, outward, because that's how it's fit. You see right here bolt holes lining up with these two bolt holes. So I'm going to take those bolts out. And once we have those two fit, still holding it in my hands, I'm going to fit two on the other side. And then basically we're in the clear because the valve body will hold it together. There you go. We're getting there with this valve body. So let me get the electrics out. Here's our solenoid action. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that away. This guy is going to sit over there and I'm just going to stick them in. Going to let them rest on that dead piece, dead channel plate area. And I'll just stick them in one by one. There we go. Check the connectors. The connectors are pointing upwards. Yes, all good. Ah, look, I made a little error here. So it's great that I didn't torque anything down, because we had one clamp sitting under this guy, and then we had another clamp sitting over here. So that's my mistake that I need to correct right now. There we go. Don't want to put it in tight. This guy will sit over there, but I'm going to do that when I've got it in the box. So I want to be able to move this still. This twist was okay. I can see the twist right here, so that's okay. We got to fit our screen again. Now I want to turn the valve body a bit so I can get my extender in. And to put a little bit of force on these guys, I'm going to put a spanner right here to work as a lever. One. Final one done. Okay. We have come to the part where we are going to torque down the valve body. The book tells us that we need to use 10 Newton meters, but everything is oily. Even if I would have cleaned everything, you cannot assume that you have a completely clean situation. So we're going to use the gut feeling like I did like 10 years ago in my 5HP18 valve body, which did fine for so many years. But we are going to use a crosswise pattern like we are doing a valve cover or a head gasket. So first I want this guy, then I want that guy. And then I want this guy. There we go, gentlemen. This is the 5HP24 valve body rebuild. We installed the shift kit. We cleaned everything a little bit manually. I didn't like fully clean it with a brake cleaner or with a degreaser. We measured the solenoids. Some of the solenoids are actually measuring too low, but it's cold outside and I think they took like 25 Celsius as a reference temperature. We've got the piston in and it slides. We don't have the crack here. We had a good bore. I'm pretty happy about this. Our next move is going to be installing this, the tailpiece and the pan on the transmission, and we're gonna finish with this transmission job. Hope you liked the movie. If you have questions on this, please comment, and I'll be back with the next phase.